on our own, on our own stuff. So we really recommend, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong there. And we can make this event free because of the sponsors. I think I'd have to charge for it, maybe, if we don't have sponsors. So thank you very much. Remember to register for prizes and also the feedback form. We look at those every month. And without further ado, let me just check the oh gosh, this is hard to do from here. This, I want to check to make sure there's nobody in the waiting room. Hey guys, if you are sponsors, if you want to hop, if you're here or maybe watching online, if you want to hop on, it's Zoom, it's can't even speak. It's streaming on Facebook and YouTube. But then also if you want to get on the Zoom, I can let you in and you can pop your information in there for the people that are watching online. And plus it'll show up later when they're watching it online. If you feel like tech savvy. And the meeting ID would be either on that flyer or in the newsletter that you would have gotten, or the event's coming. Yeah. So, okay. We still have a few people coming in, so that's great. The room is just getting packed and packed and packed. So we love that, that everybody's starting to come back out after, 2.5 years or so being pretty sick. So, all right. So without further ado, we're going to start out. I'm going to have these ladies introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their background, and then maybe why they're different than the competitors out there. And then we'll dive into the questions. We'll leave space for you all to ask questions in person and online after each question. Then we'll open it up at the end for general questions. If you're here in person, you know where the restrooms are, you know where the food and drinks are. Just hop up and help yourself. So, all right, who wants to go first?
My name is Angie Locasicio. I work for Security Title Services. I've been in the title industry for 27 years now. Started out as a closer. So I know a lot of you probably bought and sold a home before. All that paperwork, I do all that paperwork, right? And read all those contracts, do all the numbers, put all the pieces together so that when you come to the closing table, if you're buying, you get your home, and if you're selling, you get to go on to a new home, right? So it's been, this industry is definitely one that has its ups and downs. And right now, I think everybody's kind of feeling it, right? You feel like interest rates are higher, but the bottom line is we've ridden a high cycle for several years. Having done this for a long time, we ride the roller coaster. We rode the highs way longer than we normally would. And so now it's kind of stabilizing a little bit. It's kind of coming down to where it needs to be. And people are freaking out over 6 and 7% interest rates.
Yeah.
That's really that's not that bad. I mean, it's just everybody got used to 2 and 3. So everything has a cycle to it. Everything, ebbs and flows. And I think we're seeing the market just stay as steady as it can. Indianapolis is great that way because it's not subject to the highs and lows that other markets are. So we definitely enjoy that. So I've seen every kind of transaction over the years. I hate to say I've seen it all because tomorrow somebody will surprise me.
Absolutely.
I mean, I always joked I could write a book, right? Some of the things that we experience, you just can't predict. You don't know what's going to happen. But there are definitely things that you can do as a homeowner to put yourself in a better position. So yeah, we'll definitely answer questions and help you guys understand that.
Hello, I feel like most of you already know who I am because you see me every month, but I'm Sara McCord with Indy Real Estate Experts and Downsizing Indy. I joined Lisa, it's been 2 years ago now. Prior to that, I was in the senior healthcare industry. I worked in a continuing care retirement community in Carmel for many years, and then as well as home health care. So I have about 15 years of experience working with seniors and in that realm. So I also actually got my real estate license in 2010 and kind of put that on the back burner and decided to join Lisa 2 years ago and brought that back up. So yeah, and it's been a great move. I'm glad to be here and helping work with seniors on downsizing and moving to that next phase of life. So
Yeah, so she's the best of both worlds, like a triple threat, but double threat. She's got the real estate experience or she's got the senior experience working with seniors. You didn't even mention the dementia friends.
Yeah. I've just had a lot of opportunity to have some different trainings over the years. So, dementia has been one that has always interested me and been something I've taken some extra classes in. And so I'm a dementia friend champion, which means I know a bit about it, but I also can help educate others about it as well. So it's been really helpful when you're working with seniors to, some family members need a little more assistance or patience with that. And I feel like I can help and assist with the family members in that process as well. So.
Yes. All right. Yeah. So both seniors experience, healthcare experience, and real estate experience. You cannot go wrong with having Sara on your team. If you're a senior citizen downsizing, or if you're the loved one of someone. We work with adult children a lot, and she just is great coming alongside them. So you guys know me too. I just already introduced myself. And so let's dive into the questions. All righty. So Sara wrote these questions for herself. No.
I actually have to remember what I put on there.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just go into question number 2. It says, where do we start if it feels too overwhelming? Who feels overwhelmed with the thought of moving or downsizing or decluttering? Yeah, I mean, I even feel that way about my own house. So yeah. So where do we start, guys?
Well, I think the first place you have to start is knowing what your next phase looks like for you. So where are you going to go? What's your plan? We work with people in all different stages, but sometimes it's a matter of building and going to a smaller house or buying a smaller house. Sometimes we're going from 2-story with a basement to a ranch kind of thing, or a condo. So, for me, it's just figuring out and helping you figure out what that next phase looks like. If it's a senior community, we can help with that. We actually, one of our sponsors, who unfortunately isn't here today, but Dave Holder with Assisted Living Locators, is a great resource. And if you're interested in looking at senior communities, that can be very overwhelming because there are so many. Oh, yeah. But he does a great job at no cost to you to just meet with you, figure out what's important to you, what you're looking for in a community setting, and then he can narrow it down to generally about 5 places for you, so it's a little less scary and going to touring 20-30 spots. So when you're thinking about the process, the first step is like, where are we going to go? Where are we headed? And that gives us an idea of what we can take with us, our space that we're going to have to transition into, and how much of our belongings we're maybe going to need to pass along or sell. And we can help with all of that too. But so I think the first step is just, when it feels overwhelming, let's just break it down into little steps along the way. And, Lisa and I are really good at, we know what those steps are and what order to do them in. So, but the first step is just figuring out where that next chapter is taking you. So,
Angie, you made a great point. We can't say like we've seen it all. Right. We've seen a lot, because exactly right. The moment we say that, tomorrow something will happen and we're like, yeah, never seen that before. Here we go. But the good thing is that we're great problem solvers, because we see problems or opportunities all the time, and we get to decide what the best way to move forward for our clients are. So we're great at doing that. So we love you to lean on us for all kinds of problems. Just give it to us, and we will take the challenge on. So yeah.
Definitely. But from a title standpoint, I think it's the same thing. And I'm going through this with my own dad and stepmom right now. it's time for assisted living, but not ready to give up the free. It's a hard decision. And so you have to figure out like what your goal is, right? The only thing I have figured out with them right now that we all agree upon is that, and they're in a different state, is that their home needs to be sold. That we all agree upon. They can't take care of it anymore. It's time for it to be sold. Health issues come into play, dementia for my stepmom, other issues for my dad. And one thing that I think is important from a title standpoint is knowing how your home is titled. Okay. So that if you have it set up, I am not a financial advisor. I am not an attorney. I will tell you that right now, but you have options. And I think the last thing you want to make sure you plan, right? Planning is all part of it. You don't want to get stuck in a situation where your children or whoever you entrust to take care of this for you, if you're not able to, that you didn't put the proper plan in place. So how many of you do you know have your home titled in a trust currently? Okay. Trusts are great. I mean, that's a good thing. That will help you avoids probate. It gives a clear line of succession for whoever you've named as your successor trustee or trustee in that matter, to be able to take over the real estate for you. Durable power of attorneys are important. It's important that if something were to happen to you, that somebody has the ability to speak on your behalf, right? Because you don't want to leave it up to other people to make decisions for you. You want somebody that you know and entrust to do this for you. So I think I've pushed really, really hard recently for my dad. I've had to do a durable POA and get it to him out of state to get it executed, because it's becoming super, super important that these things be done. And you always kick the can down the road, like we all do it. It's fine today, and then tomorrow it's not. So it's one of those things that, and another thing, and I'll tell you again, running into, you've seen it all type things. I'm dealing with a situation right now. If you've been married before and you're in a second marriage, that's very dicey as far as how you set up when there are other children and stepchildren involved, like who's going to get the proceeds if something happens. And it can get very, on my side with my step siblings, it's very amicable. We have a plan in place because I know what to do. So we've laid it out specifically what happens since there are stepchildren involved. But most people don't think of that. And you get a surviving spouse whose children then get very angry that they weren't involved in any of the decision making. So it's important that you think through all of these things, and a will, of course, is very valuable if you have one. The trusts are valuable. The powers of attorney. I mean, you hate to think of the worst case scenario, but the old saying, if you fail to plan, and you're planning to fail, right? So this is what will happen. And then you may end up, your property will get tied up, in probate, and you don't, and that's not a bad thing either per se, as long as it's laid out, but it just depends on how quickly you want to be able to liquidate things. Because if you do pass without a will in place or anything as a directive, it does tie up the real estate for some time. It can tie it up for up to 9 months. And you can have the Social Security involved, Medicare, Medicaid, all those things. So the more prepared you are, the better. So if you're not sure how your property is titled, it's an easy thing to figure out. It's always something we can help you with, because it's a public records thing. So it's online. It's an easy thing for us to look up for you just with your property address. And that's something that we can easily help you with at no cost. I mean, it's just an easy thing to do. So if you're not sure, definitely find out, and so that and that you have the paperwork in place, that where you're, like, for example, my dad's will, I have a copy of it in my lockbox. He and my stepmom both, I have their wills. They have a copy as well. And then my stepsister has copies. It's important that everybody that needs those has access to them. I have somebody else right now, they have an unsigned will and they have a loved one that's in a health crisis, and that's not going to do them any good. And it can't be executed if you're not competent. So, these are things that it's just better to have them in place and hope you never need them. But it's definitely worth talking about and making sure you know where you stand with those items.
Yeah, that, I mean, you covered like a lot of it. Yes. I mean, so many things, like you don't want to leave your adult children or somebody else with a mess to clean up. That you don't want that legacy. And yeah, other family members. Geez, you made so many good points. What about, I always like to tell people what happens to the power of attorney when that person dies.
A power of attorney does not survive with you. So once you pass, that power of attorney also becomes null and void. And I could pull 100 people on the street and they would probably 95 would get that. They would think that, well, I gave my son power of attorney, so when I'm gone, it's fine. It's not fine. It ceases upon death. So you have to have a plan in place beyond that. The power of attorney is great if you are incapacitated, as long as it specifies that. Most durable power of attorneys, that's the purpose of them, is that if it's durable, then it survives your incompetency. So if you were to have, be diagnosed with dementia or be unable to take care of your affairs, then your power of attorney could still handle them for you. Bank accounts, that's a huge thing too, right?
Yeah.
Access. I mean, that's what I'm dealing with right now, is that I need to be able to have access to my dad's financial records if something happens. So it's all these things that tangle into one. So it's just super, like I said, super important that you take a few minutes and take an assessment of that and know where it's at, and let your, if you have children or whoever is supposed to take care of these things for you, that they know where these items are located at, so that they can get to them quickly, because there's nothing worse than trying to be able to get access and pay bills for you and get to the bank, and they can't help you if they can't find the document.
Yeah. And Sarah and I see adult children who are working and raising kids, and they're trying to take care of their parents' affairs. That's called the sandwich generation. And we're already overwhelmed with our own lives. And so this just adds to it. And I know that nobody watching today intends for that to happen. You don't. And so one way that you can prevent that is to do a lot of what Angie's talking about. Just get it organized, get a plan in place, and let all the important people, the people that need to know, let them know where everything is, how you access things, and that sort of thing. So yeah, we do have 2 attorneys who are sponsors, and they're both with clients today. So is Dave. He had some tours to take care of. So again, our sponsors are great, and that's why they're busy. So what else, Sarah? Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I was going to say Jeff Stinson and Miranda Rose Richards on your sponsor sheet are both really great attorneys that would be able to help with any of those documents that Angie mentioned. So,
yeah. Okay. Any questions? I'm going to check. I don't see anything in the chat box. If you're watching online, you can pop questions in the chat box. You can raise your hand or just unmute your mic and shout it out. Okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Just a question. You set up a power of attorney, say 20, 30 years ago, and all the individuals involved are the same.
Yes.
Does that ever need to be updated?
So the question, just for the audience, if you set up a power of attorney 20 or 30 years ago and all the same people are still, nothing's changed, does it need to be changed at all?
As long as it doesn't have an expiration date, no, and a durable typically does not. So as long as you haven't changed your mind of who you want to handle it, right? If all the things are the same, then yeah. The only thing that if we receive one that's over usually 5 years old, then whoever is representing you as your attorney, in fact, at closing per se, we would have them execute a form that just states that you are still alive and everything is still in effect as far as they're aware. It's called an affidavit and for the POA, and we just attach it to it and record it that way. So, yeah.
I attended a seminar similar to this, and a similar question was asked, and the attorney present said that it's a good idea to have them updated periodically because the laws change.
Right.
Yeah.
Probate numbers change and that kind of thing.
Right.
It's all state law.
It could be, right.
So it's a good idea to just check with your provider.
Right.
Yes.
Every couple of years.
Right.
Make sure you're still okay.
Right. I would agree. And for the most part, for POAs, you could have had it executed in another state, right? You could have lived somewhere else. And for the most part, Indiana's pretty pretty, what is the word, accommodating that way, and that if it's executed, as long as it was executed correctly in the state in which it was, we accept it. So, but he's right. I mean, it probably wouldn't hurt. There's not a lot that's changed with powers of attorney. The thing that changes more than anything is who you're going to appoint, right? You may be like, well, like you may have divorces, you may have whatever, right? So.
Yeah, and I know that our attorneys would say you want to get that stuff evaluated regularly anyway.
Right.
And so whoever did that document for you, it would, maybe it's the same person who, executed a will or trust for you. I would just check in and say, hey, are we good? Just to make sure nothing's changed. And they will know the questions that you don't know that you ought to be asking. They will know because they're in that industry. They do that all the time. So a lot of times we don't know. I mean, we just don't know what we don't know, right? And so you don't know what questions to ask. And if you don't know the right questions to ask, you don't know, you're not going to get the right information. So a lot of it's just that. And speaking of questions, I don't know if we have them. Oh, we have the flyers here on the table. When you're leaving, we have flyers, and on the back of them, they have questions to ask when you're touring senior communities. We're going to be touring the communities of our sponsors this year. Dave Holder is going to be setting that up so he can really show his expertise in what he does. But the questions, feel free to take one of the flyers. Just as you're touring, you can, have a checklist and ask our ladies and gentlemen questions as you're touring. So, all right. So let's move on to question number 3. How do I determine what maintenance or repairs should be done prior to selling?
I'm gonna have no.
I know you'll have some stuff to say too, but this is a tricky question, and it's one of the things I feel like we get asked probably first and by almost every client. What do I need to do to get ready to list my home? And it's different for every person. But best case scenario, we're going to come, we're going to meet with you. We're going to take a look around the home. We're going to see what your concerns are. And then we may bring up some of our own concerns if we've, taken a look around. But as far as maintenance and repairs go, it just depends. I mean, typically once you start with one thing, then it just snowballs into the next and the next and the next. And, you may freshen up, one area, and then all of a sudden, now my baseboards look like it just happened to me. I just had new carpet put in our living room, and now I'm like, well, now all my baseboards need to be cleaned and painted. Because now I can just see them better, so it just snowballs into the next thing and the next thing. So sometimes we're going to suggest, it's not necessarily doing the maintenance. It's just let's disclose anything that we need to disclose on the seller's disclosure and list the house appropriately based off of what needs to be done. There can be maybe some small little things that would be pretty easy to do. And so we can talk through those things and see what's important to you and what you think maybe something to do. But we can also always do a pre-inspection. So we partner with inspection companies that can come in and give you an idea of the things that are going to come up on an inspection report from the buyer. And if those things are super concerning, we can, address them ahead of time and show proof that those things have been done and repaired. But every house is different. If there's a lot of deferred maintenance, we can sell the property as is and just disclose what those items are. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's a good thing about Sara. She says everything that I would say. So no, and more usually. So it's always good. I mean, generally speaking, when we're working with a person who's downsizing, there's going to be deferred maintenance. We hear the word hoarder a lot. We hear, what else? It's dirty. The basement, we don't go down there anymore. We just don't.
Visit upstairs. We're not sure what we're gonna find when we go up there, but
Yeah, there might be something living up there. Yeah, so we have seen a lot and we don't judge you or your family members for having a deferred, maintenance house or a cluttered house or a basement that you don't come into anymore. So that's our job actually. So, is to come in and assess the situation and then get a starting point and then just chunk it out. Like Sara said, just take it in chunks. Here's what we're going to do first. And so we, based on the person who we're meeting with, we will devise a plan and then we'll implement it with you or a team. And just let us do the work. I mean, that's what we're here for, and that's what we love to do. So, I jumped back to where do we start if it feels too overwhelming. We offer free consultations, and you just call us, and we'll come out and talk to you, and wherever you're at. I mean, we've been talking to people. I have a person who we're going to be listing his mother's house. I think I mentioned this before, because this is probably the prize for the longest person. I started talking to his mother back in 2016. I knew like when son moved in, she passed, and now I've been working with the son for a couple of years now. Actually, I've met his neighbors, we've had dinner, we've had lunches. So it's never too early, even if you're, 5 years out or whatever. Like Angie said, you could be, and somebody else said it in the audience before the event, you could be fine one day chugging along, and then the next day something happens that just changes the trajectory of everything, changes all the plans. And so we want to have a trusting relationship with you when that happens, so that you don't hesitate to reach out to us and know that we're going to step in and help you take care of at least the real estate and the downsizing part, and we can connect you to the other resources that you might need given the situation. So any questions? Yes, sir. I'll repeat the question just for the online members because I'll get tripped up if I try to run over there.
You refer to a durable power of attorney. What is that? And is there different kinds of power?
That's a great question. So the question was, what is a durable power of attorney, and are there different kinds of power of attorneys?
Yes, there are different kinds of powers of attorney. If somebody what we do a lot of times for people, if they're, let's just say it's a husband and wife or whatever the situation would be, and one can't be at the closing, we would do that specific for that transaction, and it's called a specific power of attorney. So it's only for that transaction, nothing else, no financial anything. It just gives that person the ability to buy or sell the house at that time, that specific house. A durable is one that you can use. It's just in place for a number of things. It is not a medical. The medical power of attorney is different. The durable, however, has a whole laundry list of items, including real estate, banking, all of that. And it does not have an expiration date unless they put one in there. But the point of the durable is so it does not expire. And it also is valid upon incompetency. In other words, if you put this POA in place, this power of attorney in place, and you are of sound mind when you do it, and then something happens to where you are not, it is still in place. It is not terminated upon incompetency. There are ones that are, you can make them. It's the beauty of everything. You can customize and have any type of document from here. But the general durable is just that it survives. It survives until you are not here anymore, and in any type of circumstance in that regard. So that's the difference. Okay.
I thought I saw another question. No, in the back. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I've heard this is take about priority one. That room.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So the question was, in terms of rooms in the house, what should we be prioritizing in terms of what a buyer is going to be looking for? And I'm going to answer your question. The reason why we don't like jump to that right away, especially with people who are downsizing, is because we don't want to give them more homework. They're already feeling overwhelmed. But it's typically the kitchen, the master bedroom, and the bathrooms. Do you want to add? You think that's
it.
Yeah. The kitchen, I mean, that's typically the heart of the house. And then the master bedroom. So don't feel like when you leave here, you need to go, get a whole new kitchen renovation and master bathroom renovation and all of that. Those are just the things that buyers are going to look at. But Sara made a great point. If you have lived in your house for 30, 40, 50 years and your health has declined to the point that you cannot maintain your house the way that you used to, and you have some deferred things, maybe the cabinets are outdated, maybe there's cracked tile or grout that needs to be, regrouted, areas that need to be regrouted. You start doing one thing or you have contractors in and it just opens up a can of worms. You're going to say, oh, the tile's great. Now my cabinets are, from the 1970s and I got to replace it. And it just goes on and on and on. For us to have a contractor at our house, I mean, for me anyway, I would give them the garage code and tell them what needs to be done. And I'll be at work and text me when you're done and that's it. But for a senior, it is like the event of the day. A contractor is coming over to clean my furnace and I can't do anything else that day. Right. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's just the truth and the matter. So think about if you had a kitchen and bath renovation team in there, you had a plumber, because now you're doing the bathrooms and they have plumbing to do, and you had a tile person, and coordinating all of that, I mean, it would make my head spin, so.
I'll just add, I actually met with a daughter last week who is selling the mom's home. She's in a community setting now. And she was asking me about, like, should I put new flooring in the kitchen? And I feel like the appliances need to be updated. And I immediately walked in and knew that whoever buys that home is never going to leave that floor plan the way that it currently is. They're going to open it up. They're going to remove the bulkhead. I mean, it was just an outdated floor plan, and that's not what buyers are looking for right now. And so, I mean, I just explained, you are going to spend, approximately however many dollars to put new flooring in. And then whoever buys this house is going to come in and completely change the way the floor plan layout is. And all of that flooring that you've just spent money on is going to get ripped up because it's not going to work. They're going to move this cabinet. These cabinets are going to flip and be turned into an island. I mean, I could just see it immediately what would happen. So, a lot of times it's just something like that, where it's like, it's not worth spending the money because somebody else is either not going to like the color you pick, not going to like the type of flooring that you pick, and they're going to tear it out anyways. So, sometimes it's better suits you to just price it knowing that someone's likely going to have to do those things when they buy the house versus taking on that project yourself.
Yeah. So because there's a cost, the cash that you're going to pay. There's that, the explicit cost, but then there are other things that are cost. Your time, your energy that you're putting forth, coordinating all of this, trying to interview and decipher who's a good contractor and who's not a good contractor. If you find a way, let us know, because we are looking for contractors constantly. We get about 1 or 2 great jobs out of them, and then we know it's time to move on to another contractor because they're going to flake out after, so I had another thought. I keep going back to I'm going to say this before I forget. Angie mentioned about if somebody becomes mentally incapacitated, getting to that point, especially if there's dementia and Alzheimer's involved, you're going to get some pushback if you wait too long. If you can do that when everybody is thinking straight and not mentally incapacitated. You know, if you're married, you and your husband or a wife, you just do it for one another, you know, power of attorneys, you know, because it's dementia and Alzheimer's are just an awful, awful disease. And there's so many different, it shows up in so many different ways. And we've seen a husband whose wife made all the decisions, and now she's mentally incapacitated, and he literally could not make a decision because he depended on her, and he's still looking to her because she does have moments of where clarity, yeah, or it seems to him that she has moments of clarity, but she's not the same person, and she's not capable of making decisions, and neither is he now because she made all the decisions. So getting, you know, an agreement together with somebody while we're all clear-minded is my best advice. Yeah. So you had a question, I think.
I was just going to add, generally, I mean, aren't there times that when you do a repair, it's a good investment at some point? I mean, dollar for dollar, you get anything back at all, but I guess it would depend on the type of repair.
Yeah, it depends on the type of repair. Things that are more cosmetic, how long are you going to live there? Are you going to live there to enjoy the cosmetic updates and improvements that you did? Things that are just, you know, we need an HVAC system. That's maintenance type stuff. That stuff, you know, has to be done. If it's on the last leg and you're just living with it and it still works, and it's most likely HVAC and water heater, and I mean, those are the types of things that we can decide when we walk around the house just to sort of assess the situation. Yeah. So, yes, ma'am.
So if you make a decision, you need to downsize, and you can only take a third of your possessions with you. What do we do with the rest of it?
Oh, do you want to answer that? That's a great question. The question was, if you make a decision that you want to downsize and you decide where you want to go, which is the first step, by the way, and it's only a third of the size of where you live now, you pick all the stuff that you want to take with you, and now you're left with this house full of stuff that you don't want to take with you. What do we do with it, Sara?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. Yes, so the first step is isolating what you are wanting to keep and take with you, and then we actually need to make sure that's going to fit, because you'd be surprised how many times people think that things are going to fit and they don't. So we can do a floor plan for you to actually make sure the furniture you're picking is going to work. But the items that remain, there's kind of a process to it. First would be, are there family or friends that want those items or have laid claim to those items? Told you before. That's the first step. And giving them a timeline, a firm date. This has to be picked up by such and such date. I am a stickler on that with clients. Then we go to, are there items that can be sold? So that could be an auction company that would come in and take your items. They would pack everything up that can be sold, put it on the truck, take it to the warehouse. Or an estate sale. Estate sales that you generally they're on your property, where buyers are going to be coming in and buying things there at the house, usually 2-3 day sale. Facebook Marketplace or Nextdoor, we've had some luck with selling items on there, especially if you just have like 2 or 3 pieces that need to be sold, and it's not beneficial for the auction house or the estate sale company to take on that project. So Lisa and I both will help with that too. If there are items that can't be sold or don't sell, then we go to donations, and we have a list of places that we know take different types of donations. But we also ask your input on that, because you may have some place that you have volunteered with or like to, give things to. So we'll work with you on that, figuring out where those donations are going to go. And then the last and final step is a junk haul. So we have the junk haulers come in and trash anything that either is not donatable or didn't sell, and that you're not going to be keeping. My little disclaimer on that is with the donation items, there are items that almost every client feels that, well, we'll donate it, but the donation houses don't want certain things. They're pretty picky these days on what they take, and due to COVID and that whole thing, the whole pandemic, that kind of increased even more so. Like a lot of places will not take fabric or upholstered furniture. They only want, So we have backup options. We can, ask for what they'll take, but some places just won't take certain things anymore. So,
Well, the only thing I would add to that, the donation places have also, besides getting really picky about what they'll take, because they just got inundated over COVID, we just sat in our houses and looked at what all we wanted to get rid of, and we all gave it away to donation places. So they're inundated. So that's why they're picky. But also they have began charging for pickups. We had a couple of companies that we use regularly that were free pickups, and now there's a lot of restrictions. They all have to be on the main level in one room, and they're going to charge depending on how much there is. But we know all of that, so when we do a detailed estimate of the whole project, and we will include those. We take into account those things. So, don't be offended if your kids don't want your stuff, but be sure to ask them. They might take some trinkety, trivial item that reminds them of their childhood, and it's just, that's all they want. What else? What else on that?
No, that's very true. A lot of my clients have already gone through that step where they're asking family or kids if they want their items before we even meet. And most times they're a little surprised that they didn't want, the china set, and we just live differently now, and people don't use those things or want those things. So don't be sad or offended that they don't want your stuff. It's just a different way of living these days. We don't entertain quite like people used to entertain. So,
I had another thought, I forget. All these things, I need to start just taking notes as you're talking or something. I don't know. It'll come back. Oh, I know. We work with a lot of people who are moving out of state to be closer to family members. We've got somebody moving to Atlanta, Georgia. We had somebody move to like the Hilton Head area.
Hilton Head last summer. Yeah.
So one thing that our movers who we use regularly, and this is one of the reasons why pointed out to us, that particular client down in Hilton Head, their kids didn't do what they're supposed to do. What Sara was saying, they had basically a half truckload of stuff that the kids were supposed to take, and we got there on moving day, which happened to be a holiday weekend, and all the stuff wouldn't fit on the truck because son didn't take what he was supposed to take. So we did make it work. We scrambled and we were sweating a lot, but we made it work. We found a truck and we found 2 people willing to drive on a holiday weekend down to South Carolina. And those people paid a really pretty penny for that. But in the midst of all of that, our movers made a really good point. She said, the gal at the office said, why are they taking all of this stuff with them? The cost of moving all of that stuff, they could drive down there and buy all new stuff.
Yeah, they could have bought brand new furniture for the cost that they were taking old things with them. So, sometimes just donate it and buy new. Yeah.
And that's always not the plan for everybody, but in this particular case, they paid so much money for movers to stuff their stuff on a truck and move it down and then unpack it when Yeah, it could have been a lot easier than that. They were adamant. They wanted that grill. They wanted that outdoor furniture, everything.
Kids' childhood toys that the kids really
Yeah.
didn't want, but you know, those are, and you know, sometimes it's sentimental, but it's also oftentimes not safe for the grandkids to even be playing with those things.
Yeah.
So you got to take that in consideration.
Yeah, lead piece paint and all. Yes, sir.
Just a question, we're talking about future space. What about super downsizing, literally selling your home and maybe having a parent move in with a family? Where they-
Yeah, so they have like a
they're
bedroom.
Really small.
Yeah.
But they're going to transfer as far as you and work with families that have gone through that.
Absolutely. Do you want to take
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, that definitely happens, like where you're taking, you know, a couple thousand square feet and going to a bedroom situation. So I actually just had a client who did that. They kind of built an apartment for her on their own property. And we got rid of an entire living room set, dining room table. I mean, she took her bedroom set and clothing, few things from the kitchen, but you know, really we didn't take much. And so a lot went to sell, a lot went to donate. We had a pretty major junk haul at that home. But yeah, I mean, it's possible. We just have to really condense down to what is needed, not wanted. And that becomes a serious conversation we have to have. You may want something, but do you actually need it? Or is there something else that can function for two things? You know, maybe it's an antique, you know, buffet of some sort that you can't let go of. So let's try to find a way to make that work. And so maybe it becomes something that has always been in your dining room, and now it's going to be your TV stand in a bedroom. I mean, we problem solve and figure out if there's items that we just cannot let go of. Well, how can we use them that are going to work in the new space too?
There's other storage solutions as well, right?
Right. Yes, I mean, that's obviously one of the huge, I don't know if it's still the #1 franchise, but it was the #1 franchise to purchase for a few years was storage units because people were filling them up. I will tell you the cost for those is really not economical. It does not make sense for most people. And when we're storing items, what, you know, you just have to take it a step. What is the purpose of that?
Yeah.
You're not going to use it. People have already generally told you they don't want it, or they would have already taken it. So oftentimes it's just, you're paying to store things that are eventually going to be thrown out anyways.
Yeah, it was, I don't know if it's still the same, but storage franchises were the fastest growing franchise for a while. And now you'll leave this room and at every corner, you'll see a storage facility. We have people who are on strict budgets, limited income, who are paying out the wazoo for storage bins. And for what purpose? I mean, you know, and they suck you in because their original price for the rental, you know, they might be having a special $99 a month, and then in less than 6 months, it'll be double. And it just, that's how they make money. So,
most situations with that, you know, once we actually go look at the storage unit that people have had and have put stuff in here, they don't even know what's in it. We had one lady that didn't even know where one of them was. She had multiple storage units, and I don't know if we ever found that 5th one. Actually, I have no idea where it is, or what was in it. So those are just examples of, you know, we think we need to keep these things, and in the end, it really isn't that important. And so, you know, sometimes it's just getting through that hurdle and the mental, emotional process of letting those items go. Yeah.
not only on those storage bins that she's talking about, or storage facilities that she's talking about, we met family members at the ones that she did know where they were because she is not mobile. So she can't even go. She physically cannot go to her storage facilities. And when we opened it, there was mold on the couch. And she's like, well, this is a low humidity, it's supposed to be protected. Doesn't matter. Humidity is everywhere. Mold is everywhere. And if you have a couch sitting in a storage bin for 10 years, well, it's going to have mold on it. It might also have animals inside the facility. And the contract that you sign with them alleviates them from any responsibility for those kinds of things. So, any other questions? That was a good question. All righty. Let's go on to 4. This is a you question, Angie. What paperwork or documents are important to have in place prior to selling?
And we pretty much touched on this already, right? I mean, same thing as before. If your property is held in a trust, make sure that if your trustee or successor trustee, whoever's going to handle the trust for you, that they know where that paperwork is at. A lot of people will leave it with their attorney as well. And you can contact the attorney to get a copy of it. But guess what? They retire as well. We had that happen recently for something that was done. The attorney's retired. Now what, right? So it's important that you keep these things handy or even give copies. I mean, we certainly don't need the originals of a trust agreement. We just need executed copies. And we really only, people get very protective of that information. And I understand why. I understand one, it's not public record. We're not going to record it. And typically we're only looking for a few pages of it. So we have people bring a binder in and bring us their whole trust. That's fine. We'll just pick through the pages we need and copy. And we just have to have them in our file to prove who was authorized to sign on behalf of that trust. So we're not interested in who your beneficiaries are. We're not interested in any of that. We just want to know who the trustee is. And if the trustee is no longer living or is no longer able to handle their business, who the successor trustee or trustees are, so that we know that they're executed right.
Yes, sir.
Would the mortgage company have that?
No, they will not. No, they will not. No. Yes.
How easy is it to find out if there's any liens against your home? You don't know about surprises are in the title of the house.
Sure.
Is it easy to go online and get that information?
The question was about liens on your property. How easy is it to find out what liens you have on your property?
For you as the consumer, is it easy? You'd struggle with it. It's out there on public record, but it's easy. A lot of times what we do, like if these ladies list a house, they may ask us to run what we call a preliminary title search, take a peek at it, and let's see what we're dealing with, so that before it goes on the market, we know what kind of beast, we got to clean something up, we got to find something, we got to, track somebody down. We had something recently that somebody had a right to buy the property that was from 1974. It's one of those, oh, that's never happened before. Right. So nice. Believe it or not, we tracked the gentleman down and he didn't want the house at that point, but he had to legally sign off to say that. So you're right. Typically if there's something against your property, you're going to know it. You should. But if you have a line of credit on your property, those are huge. People forget that those are mortgages. They are tied to the equity
even if
of the
it's
home.
zero.
Even if it's zero, and that's what happens. You paid it off. That's the beauty of an equity line. You can pay it down to zero, but it's still there if you need it again. It's like a credit card. You pay it off, you borrow it again. It's a revolving line of credit. So, and most of them have lifespans where you can only borrow for typically 10 years on them, and then you have like a 20-year or 30-year repayment cycle. But they won't let you borrow on them after 10 years. We see them all the time. They're like, well, I don't have well, you do. It probably has a zero balance, hopefully, but it's still open, and therefore we have to close it. That is a contingency for you to sell the property. So that is probably the most common thing that people forget about, because a lot of people just don't understand that that it is tied to the equity in your home, and that you did sign a mortgage, right? Reverse mortgages are a whole other beast that we don't have to touch on right this second. But there are all kinds of different things out there. For the most part, for you to go online and find this stuff is going to be a challenge, and you would have to pay and sign up and all this stuff. So it's probably not very easy, but it's a phone call to her, then she's a phone call to me, and we can figure it out quickly from the desktop. Yeah, typically. So yeah.
So I had a situation recently. This is one of those things that are like, oh, okay, this is happening. I had a couple who had, I think it's one of your files that you have. We should have done preliminary title work. It's like $1.5 million tax lien on their property for business taxes that they didn't pay.
Yeah.
House was only in her name. She died. Guess where the house is going?
The IRS.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah. That's, again, it's an uncommon thing, right? Another thing we do deal with though is that, especially if you're on Medicaid, if you still own your home and you're on Medicaid, they will have a lien against your property. We have to check with FSSA every time we have somebody who has recently passed away. Even if if the husband or wife or another person's still in title, they could still have a claim to the property. And we have to make sure that that's paid back. I'm dealing with that with my dad right now. He's going to have to go on Medicaid if he goes into assisted living. His house will have to be sold. His equity will become the property of the Social Security of Medicaid, which is fine. I told him that's fine. That's what it's for. You need to live, right? So there's 1,000 different situations, but if we do have to check with the government every time situations like that come up, because they may have a right to part of the proceeds that's already been used.
Why would it go to Medicaid?
If you're using any kind of for example, I'll just say, because I'm dealing with this right now with my father. So if he goes into assisted living, he doesn't have to sell his house right away, but they'll start using the equity on it to pay for his assisted living since he can't pay for it himself. And so that money it'll drain his equity out. Okay. And so and then when the house is sold, we'll have to pay off whatever is already been paid to Medicaid. And then the rest of it, they'll deal with it at that point. So there's 1,000 situations, but it's just one of those things we have to pay attention to from the title side and make sure that, because the last thing we want is because Medicaid, if it's in an estate, Medicaid will automatically make a claim. When the estate's open, they'll make a claim to the estate if they're owed anything. Okay. Something else you need to keep, if you're entitled with your spouse and your spouse passes away and you were entitled together, we are going to need a copy of the death certificate. That is something I cringe and I hate asking for it every time, but we have to legally have it. I don't need an original. Take a pic. You can give it to Lisa. She can take a picture over their phone and she can text it to me. That's good enough. I just need to see the official death certificate so that we can document in our file, because then we'll prepare an affidavit to that effect. So these are things that are obviously very sensitive. We don't like to ask for them, but we have to. So, if you can just, keep these things all together.
From the Medicaid being attached to real property, isn't that only at the point of application? And like you won't start accruing the liabilities of Medicaid until you apply.
Oh, for sure. Until you're actually using Medicaid, 100%.
Living.
Right. If you can pay for it. Exactly.
Right.
If you can pay for assisted living, Medicaid only comes into effect when you can't pay for it, which is my guess.
There's another thing too. I wish the attorneys were here. I mean, we're not attorneys, we're not Medicaid specialists, but we have heard, because we do these events and we work in this industry, we've heard a lot that if you are working with someone who is on Medicaid, it's best to schedule that closing for the beginning of the month. So the funds enter the account at the beginning of the month. And if there are other things that need to be paid, they can be paid through that, because Medicaid will, at the end of the month, there's a requirement, there's a restriction on how much money can be in that account. If you're on Medicaid, $2,000. Yeah.
My father's on Medicaid.
Right.
Make sure his account is monthly. It's just writing a check for what you. But we did engage in a lot of planning, selling, and the mother. Father. So it was just a lot of things that he couldn't help with. That's a real thing for me. And so any enhancement, we assist them. I'm getting nervous to treat. No, honestly. Because I also have a we're able to do some things to avoid Medicaid for some assets, so typically talking to the attorney at the end. But it's very situations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is very, very situational.
It's no different than anything. There is no cookie cutter answer to any of that, for sure.
That's why when we have our attorneys on the panel, a lot of their answers are, it depends, and they're not trying to be elusive, but, they're attorneys, so they're coming from the legal perspective, and everyone's situation is different. You have 5 brothers and sisters. Well, what if you're only child, or, what if there's a step family involved, or, so it's best to, just have the professional look through all, give them the deep download on all of your stuff, depending on what area it is, if it's Medicaid planning or legal stuff or real estate stuff. Let us look at the full picture and then come up with a plan that it works best for you.
And I will say, it is also, my parents are in a different state. It's different per state.
Yeah.
So it's not the same here as it is where they're at. So you have to plan. And if you're going to end up in the state where your children are at, different rules.
Yeah.
So it is very tricky, for sure.
And I know I could just hear Miranda and Jeff saying, let us come up with a plan that works best for you, that fits your goals, because everybody's goals are going to be different. Yeah.
Absolutely. For some, you want to leave, if you want to leave something for your kids, then that's great. I mean, it's all how you plan it, right? And in my dad's case, he's not there. We don't expect anything, and we just want them taken care of, right? I mean, that's the end goal for us, is that they're taken care of. They're in a safe place. That's key. They're taken care of. I don't care what's at the end. I want to know that they're safe. So that's, you have to establish all those things up front so that you know.
Yeah, some people they want to leave their kids, their family member, or other surviving family members, a legacy in the form of a big, inheritance. Other people are like, heck no, that's my money, I'm spending it.
Right.
And no, there's no wrong or right answer. It's just your preference. And, so let us come alongside you and help you get to what your goals are. So, all right. Yeah, is that the next? Should we be concerned about interest rates?
What items to bring to the closing table?
Oh, did we talk about, we skipped that one. What do I need to bring to the closing table? Common issues that hold up closing.
Hopefully as far as coming to the closing, when you come to closing, we have to have a government issued photo ID. Okay.
That's not expired.
Not expired. Oh, that's a huge thing. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be a driver's license. It could be a passport. It could be a state ID if you don't drive anymore. It just can't be expired, and it has to have your photo on it. So that's the first thing we ask for, is because we have to make sure the parties we have at the table are actually the parties that are entitled to sell or purchase the real estate. A lot of times, hopefully everything else has been taken care of. We don't want at the table issues in that regard. So there should be no surprises per se. The only other thing we ask you bring is that if you want us to wire transfer your funds to you after closing, that you bring your banking information to the closing. I don't want it by email. I won't take it by email. Too much fraud. I'm not interested in it. I want you to keep it with you. You bring it to us. You fill out a form in person, and we'll wire it. If you want to walk out with a paper check, go for it. We're more than happy to give you a check to walk away with. Okay. So really, from our standpoint, ID and whatever you want us to do with your money, that you bring those instructions. That's all we're interested in at that point.
Yes, sir.
What are the latest, greatest communication technology you guys use now? You mentioned email's not very safe. What about is fax still?
You know, I joke that I do have a fax. It's an electronic fax, but as anything can be compromised. That's the problem, right? Anything can be compromised. We use a lot of secure portals with two-factor authentication. From our standpoint, we're taking in money that doesn't, as an escrow company, that doesn't belong to us. It's not our money. It's the lenders, it's yours, it's everybody. So we're taking in money and sending it back out of our account. And so we have to protect every penny of it. We have several, we pay for cyber insurance, which is super expensive to prevent, to kind of prevent people from, our systems are secure to start with, but unfortunately what happens is other parties outside of us, their emails get compromised. And then, so it's a vicious thing. I mean, it's a constant thing that we were on top of and always changing and protecting. So a lot of two-factor authentication, a lot of pick up the phone and call. Yeah. Right? We pick up the phone and call a lot. We have companies that we use, we wire payoffs to your mortgages. We actually go into a company, we go into their portal and put in all the lender's information for the payoff, and it comes back and gives us a green light, red light, or whatever. And we only do it once we get a green light, because even payoffs can be altered and become fraudulent. So we're skeptical, and we have to be skeptical and jaded about absolutely everything to protect you.
Well, we have to think about where she's coming from. She's coming from the perspective of a title insurance company. So she's an insurance company. She's insuring. You are taking over clear title if you're a buyer, and you're giving clear title if you're a seller. So
I will say one thing that I talked to my boss yesterday, and we just put into place. One trend that we have right now is that a lot of people don't come to closing anymore. It used to be an event where everybody came. When I was a closer, it was an event. People dressed up. I wore suits. I mean, we can't, it was a thing, right? And now I'll be lucky if I can get all the parties to the same table, very rarely. So we do a lot of email closings. Well, there is a sort of a little more complicated, but yes. And one thing that we put in place yesterday, we have a lot of sellers that are in different states. They don't want to fly back to closing. That's fair. But a lot of times they're like, they don't want to pay. We have a national service that we use that's secure, that where we upload the documents to their portal. They send a notary to you wherever you want to be, library, your home, Starbucks, wherever. They will notarize your documents. They will send them back to us via FedEx, okay, and put them in their secure portal. Some people, it's like for the seller, it's $150 cost. I don't want to pay that. I don't want to pay that. I have my own notary. The problem that our underwriters have notified us of is that because of technology, and people can actually fraudulently duplicate notary seals. Okay, it happens. Everything's electronic. It's a simple cut and paste. And so therefore we've made the decision that everybody has to use this service so we can control the notary. You can't pick your own, because then you're not in front of me. I don't know that you really are that you're really the seller. And, so I hate that it comes to that, but at the end of the day, everything we do is to protect the title of your home, whether you're selling it or buying it, and most importantly, protect your money. We have to protect everyone's money in the transaction, and that gets harder every day for us. It really does.
How's yours a warranty deed?
A limited warranty deed. A warranty deed. So the premise of a warranty deed is that it does provide you if you're signing it as the seller, you are providing the guarantee that you are the owner of that property and you are transferring a free and clear title. A limited one is used a lot by banks. You'll see that if a bank is entitled to a property, because they don't live there, so they can't give the full warranty that you as an owner can. But for the most part, it's not going to. It doesn't affect the transferability or the new owner, whoever's getting the title to it through a limited deed. It doesn't affect their ability. It doesn't affect your owner's policy. You still have a title policy on it that is in full effect, regardless of the type of deed. But a warranty deed is what we use primarily. A trustee's deed is the same thing. It's a trustee's warranty deed. We have limited liability deeds, but those are for companies. They're for LLCs. Okay. So, and special warranty deeds, there are different kinds, but the limitations on them are not such that it's going to be, it's not something that you as a buyer of a property need to be concerned about, because you're going to have that owner's policy behind it. We're going to protect you. I mean, we're not going to let you receive a deed that doesn't give you what you need as an owner.
So if I have a limited warranty on my property.
You're fine. You're fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good stuff. Good time check here. Okay, so now we can get to, should we be concerned about interest rates? Should we be concerned about interest rates?
Want me to answer that?
No, I was looking at that to see if the interest rate was on there.
No,
There's
I
another
don't-
one that has the interest rate. Oh, we have a lender
Good
right
job.
here.
I think I saw, no, you don't need to be concerned about interest rates. There's still, in our area, there are still buyers. Our inventory of what we have out there is low. So there are still buyers that are ready to buy that can't find what they're looking for. So if you are a seller, there's, it's, you know, the days on the market as far as, you know, well, I have it right here. For February, the average days on market is 52. That's a significant increase from what we saw, you know, last summer or the summer before. I mean, it was what, 2?
Yeah, and this is, by the way, this is Marion County,
Yeah, Marion County.
and this is a median sales. Well, yeah, so
Yeah, so right now for Marion County, the average is 52. So buyers are still out there. There are other things that could be done to help them buy down their interest rate, that kind of thing. But if you are a seller, it's not something that there's still plenty of people looking for your properties to buy. So
yeah,
what is it, 7? I saw this morning, I think 7.1, 11 or something like that. 6.3 on a 15-year, 7.1 on a 30-year fixed, I think I saw. So yes, they obviously have gone up from what we've seen the past few years, but like Angie said at the beginning, there's still not bad interest rates based off of what I've been told.
yeah,
Well, and what we saw in the past couple of years is a very abnormal market.
Yeah.
Tell you from our standpoint, from a title company standpoint, when COVID hit, obviously we were very panicked because people come to closing. If people can't come to closing, well, we're not going to have any business, you know. But I will say that the real estate market definitely prospered during COVID for a number of reasons, and that prolonged the cycle we had already been in of good times. And so, like I said, this is it's unfortunate, but it's also necessary to stabilize the prices and the market and to settle it down a little bit. So while none of us necessarily like the slowdown in that regard, it has to happen and it'll be okay.
Balance.
It's balance.
Yeah.
It's all balance. It's all balance.
So in the real estate industry, we typically say if there's less than 6 months of inventory on the market, it's a market that is preferential to sellers. So we're at 52 days or so. So roughly by the end of this, when we get March's stats, because they're always a month behind, we'll probably be 60 days or so. That's 2 months. So it's still a market that's preferential to sellers. There's still a huge shortage of inventory. And if you know anything about economics, it's simple economics, supply and demand. There is not enough supply to meet the demand. And so Angie's right. We've been in a seller's market for, I feel like it's been like 10 or 12 years. It's been a seller's market. Yeah, it is. And, you know, last year and the year before that, we, getting 12 offers on a house in less than 24 hours, that's not ideal for anyone involved. It's obviously not ideal for buyers. Sellers, a purchase agreement is 8 pages now. So 8 times 12 offers, you have 8-page contracts to go through with your realtor. Do you want to read all that? I mean, and they're written by attorneys. So, I mean, we were making spreadsheets for people with the pertinent data from the purchase agreement so that they could just see it on a quick view. Yeah. That's not a healthy market either. And so 2% interest rates, that's ridiculous. I mean, for a house, and so when I started in 2007, we were in the 8s. And I actually started in 2006 with a builder, and our builder was telling us, these are all-time lows. The 1980s, they were like double-digit interest rates. You always hear about the 1980s when people still bought houses then. Well, there's a whole bunch more people in the United States than there were in the 1980s. So you have to know supply and demand. There's a shortage of inventory. Indiana also, Sara touched on it. We enjoy a pretty steady market, relatively speaking, to say California or Florida. We don't have super high highs and low peak and very low peaks. We do, it goes up and down, it shifts, but it's not like how it is in other,
It stays pretty steady. I mean, pretty stable.
We don't see the
swings.
We're seeing things that are indicative of a normal market, like
Counter offers.
Yeah. Oh gosh, counter offers. What? Inspections.
Yeah.
Some people were waiving inspections, for God's sakes. Yeah. And maybe depending on the situation, maybe a buyer's asking for closing costs, or maybe a seller's offering home warranties now, or those are all things in a normal, healthy market. So, but it's a seller's market. It's shifting more into a more balanced market. And then what's going to happen next, based on history, based on what has happened for years and years and years, it's going to shift into a buyer's market, meaning there's going to be too much supply for the demand. And so what will happen to sales prices is they might go down a little bit. And so we're not there yet. We're moving that way, but we're not there yet. Yeah.
Some of the, just like I said, I read contracts every day, right? And it had gotten to the point where it was just an offer. It was the 8-page offer. There was they were accepted. You came with your best offer, and you, as a buyer, you offered, whatever you could do to make your the one that they would select. And now I am reading counter offers. Like I had one with 5 counter offers, and I was like, yeah. So not that I want to keep reading page after page after page, but that's a normal market, right? And like you said, home warranties are back into play, inspections are back into play. I think the funniest one last summer, some buyer offered to buy the seller pizza every Friday night until the home closed. It was written in the contract. It was the most bizarre thing ever.
I saw that. It was
like, really? Like what? Yeah. So
yes, ma'am.
If you're considering downsizing, not going into assisted living, etc., and there are very few homes on the market, you could find yourself living on the sidewalk.
If you're, you say that again. If you're downsizing, but you're not going into a senior community,
to buy something.
So you're going to buy something.
You could get yourself in trouble.
Well, you can make. We've seen everything. Well, not everything, but we've seen a lot. We've seen sellers make the sale of their house contingent on them finding and successfully closing on a house themselves. What else? We've seen delayed possession. So you might close on a Friday, March 1st, but then you maintain possession for 2 weeks after. So you have time to move or close on your other house and those types of things. So that's why it's important to just sit down with one of us so we know what your goals are, and we can make a path together going forward to get you to that goal. Yeah. Yes, sir.
In a market such as we have now, that's favorable to sellers, might it not be a good advantage, if you're going to do what this lady suggests, to find your new home first and then sell your existing home after, because it will sell rather quickly?
Yes, that's true. That's another option. So Tom Hedrick's here. He's been on the panel, guys. He's a lender, specializes in reverse mortgages. There you go. So it might be beneficial to find the house that you're going to be buying first, buy that, close on that. I know a lot of people might need the proceeds from the sale of their house. There's even financing that we can work out with that too. And so Tom would be the person to talk to you about that. So in the form of like a bridge loan or home equity line of credit, things like that. So again, it makes sense to just sit down. We're not going to stalk you. We do not want to work with people who don't want to work with us. That's no fun for anyone involved. So just sit down, let's talk about your goals and let us figure out a way to get you there together. So yeah. Anyone else?
You won't live on the sidewalk. I
No,
promise.
we don't have nobody that I know of is living on the sidewalk.
Your basement, not your basement.
No, not your basement. No, I have a 17-year-old living in my basement and that's enough. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about interest rates. Yeah. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Just a general question here, wrapping up. How long would you suggest that we start the process of downsizing?
Oh, yeah.
In
That's
terms of the general time frame, ideal for you, ideal for most people trying to downsize.
That is a really great question. I'm glad you asked that. We did not pay this gentleman to ask that question. The question was, what is the typical timeline from the time that you decide, let's say the time that you decide, okay, I'm downsizing, to the point where you are moved in and settled into wherever it is you're downsizing. If you're buying a house, you're moving into a senior community, whatever, and you're closed on your house that you sold. What's the typical time frame? Let's say, what's the typical time frame if you were to do it yourself versus hiring us to do it?
If you're going to do it yourself, typically you are looking at least 6 months, but closer to a year, most people. Would you say?
Yeah, sometimes more. I mean, I told you about the guy I've been working with since 2016. That's an extenuating circumstances, but yeah.
We can generally take that and get that down to less than 3 months.
Yeah, that's safe.
Sometimes less. I mean, sometimes it's 30 to 45 days. This summer we had some that were from start to finish, closed at the closing table, moved everything. But typically about 3 months.
Yeah, and we've had people who did it themselves who took 3 years, and family members got involved and it was chaotic and they lost their sort of autonomy in terms of making choices the way they wanted and things like that. So yeah, I mean, anyway,
that's when it gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
We can take a lot of that away.
Were there other hands up that I missed? Okay, yes.
So you guys would be charging by the hour, or how does that work?
Oh, that's a good question too. So how do we charge, by the hour, or how does that work? So we charge by the project. Some of the contractors that we use do charge by the hour, but we work with them for so many years that we know based on what your project looks like about how many hours it's going to be. So when we do an estimate, it's conservative. We leave some cushion room in there just for incidentals. Things happen all the time. Yeah, surprises. But so we give you a detailed estimate of the full project, and it'll be a range, but it's not charged by hour. Yeah, because we don't want
average price.
Oh, what's an average price?
So if you're
Depends on where you're moving.
Yeah, so if you're moving to like less than 1,000 square feet apartment, let's say, generally 3,500 to 5,500.
That's everything. That is us overseeing the entire project. That's sorting, packing, moving, unpacking,
junk haul,
shred bin, auction company, professional cleaning, professional photography, and now your house is on the market.
Mm-hmm. Over 1,000 square feet, it's generally 5,000 to 10,000, somewhere in that range. It can also depend on what needs to be done on the existing home. So to give you an example, I had a couple that were moving later this month, and they're going to 775 square foot apartment. So you would think their estimate would be less, but they have, a 2,000 square foot home that has bad carpet that all needs to be ripped out and junk hauled away. And so that's labor, and that's weight that has to be, as far as the junk haul goes, it goes a lot of times by weight. So their estimate is a little bit above, just because we know that getting that carpet out of there and exposing the original hardwood floors is going to sell their home quicker at a higher rate. So, yeah. So there's always little extenuating circumstances, but that gives you kind of an idea.
It really, I would say, the biggest deciding factor on the price range is going to be where you're moving to. Are you moving in state or out of state? That's a biggie because moving costs are obviously going to be bigger if you're moving out of state. And then how big the space is where you're moving to. So, okay, so we have one last question. What is our best piece of advice that we can leave the audience with?
To reiterate what we've talked about already, and that is just know where your documents are at, right? If you have important documents, have them, and if you don't have them in place, get them in place, right? Do the powers of attorney. If you have a trust, make sure you know where that's at. A will, all of those things. Talk to an attorney, talk to a CPA, just get it planned, because that's going to make the process so much smoother on your children if you have any that are helping you. Because I've dealt with so many health crises with both my parents in the past year that we didn't anticipate. And you just can't. Every day that I have this because of the questionnaire, but last year when I was here, my mom had just come out of open heart surgery. Yeah. My dad was in the hospital, and I had to have this because I needed to be there in case they needed me. So you have to plan. And so just that is my piece of advice. If you have all those pieces in place, then you're going to make their lives easier, and you're going to make your kids' lives easier, whoever's helping you. It's just
you're going to make your life easier.
Your life easier too. Yeah. It's just better to have it all in place now. Definitely.
What about you, Sara?
I would just say, don't wait. Plan ahead of time. Even if I had a lady the other day say, well, what's too early to call you? It's not, if that's not a question. It's never too early to call. I don't care if you're thinking about 5 years from now or, 5 months from now, just call. Because the earlier that you can get things in place, get things thought through, processes thought through, and have us on board with you doing that and helping you. Sometimes people will think, well, I want to move in 2 weeks. Well, the movers may not have that availability to move you in 2 weeks. So it's never too early. It can definitely be too late to call. So just call early.
That's a good point. It's never too early to call us. We don't, if there's an emergency that happens and we need to move in 2 weeks, our contractors are good contractors, and good contractors are busy. So in order to get a date that you prefer, let's get talking ahead of time. The other thing I thought of while Sara was talking is there may be things that you think that you have to do that we will tell you, don't do that. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your resources, because you don't need to do that. So I saw one hand over here.
I was just going to reiterate the ounce talking about like that initial stuff. Probably save one previous together, going to that spend. Who the beneficiary of policy? You can remove some of those assets just by doing a little bit of opinion.
Yeah.
What it be done. You're lucky.
Yeah, just for the audience online, or if you can hear, he said hiring a professional to help his parents save him about hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially. And that is the case. Hiring professionals in the long run will save you money. There was a stat that the National Association of Realtors tracks, and it is about for sub owners, and I've never seen it going the other way, but for sub owners leave money on the table, and it's more than the commission of a real estate agent. They usually sell their house for about 10 or 20% less than if you would list with a real estate agent, and that is way higher than the commission that we charge. That'd be great if we could charge 20%. Wow, we'd only have to sell a few houses a year, right? So, okay, so we're going to do some drawings. We have a basket that, does anyone else need to fill out the prize baskets? or the prize forms. Okay, you need one, he needs one. So we've got a basket that Stacy Bunas from ClearCaptions always brings. She was here earlier, but she had to go because she's busy too, installing phones. And then we've got a few roses from Eagledale Florist, who's also a sponsor. Their flowers are amazing. They last for weeks and weeks and weeks. I don't know what they do to them or where they get them, but they're great. All right. You guys online, thank you so much for attending. If you've got questions, again, type them in the chat box. I'm still watching it here. We see them after the event's over. I'm happy to reach out and answer your questions. Remember to fill out the feedback forms. If you're in person, we will review those and take your suggestions into consideration. Oh, I wanted to also, you guys are in person, you have this. I wanted to let you know there's a couple of typos. First of all, the Zoom meeting ID is wrong. So I want you to tell people about it, your friends, but don't give them that Zoom ID. I do not have it on me right now. I don't know how to get to it. I'm from here. But if you do invite somebody and need that Zoom ID, just reach out to me and we'll give you the right one. We have new ones coming. And then on the back, I think there's one date that's wrong. I don't remember. November.
It should be November 9th, I believe, instead of the 12th.
Yeah, all of our events are always the second Thursday of the month.
All right. And if they want to RSVP for future online, they can just go to downsizingindy.com and you'll see our event tab there. If they RSVP, they'll get the right Zoom link.
They RSVP on the or on the phone too. A lot of people call in, a lot of people text me, and I RSVP for them on the form and it sends you the right Zoom link. All right, the winner of the basket from ClearCaptions is Marty Culver. Marty, hi. You have a significant other, you can be like, I got this for you today. All righty. All right, so let's give away some roses. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there. She makes those by hand. Dottie Renner, you get a rose. I think there's probably one on your table. There's two more. Mary King, you get a rose, and Shirley Sauber. Where's Shirley? Oh, there you are. All right, you can take that one there at your table. Let us do a few more. Phil Hexamer, you can give that to your girlfriend. Paul Ludwig.
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Here. And then Trish Reedy. Is that one?
Riedel.
Okay. Yes, you can take maybe the one behind you.
There's one out here too.
There's one up here too. Yeah. There's one here. Yeah, there's several. All right, you guys, remember next month is April 13th, building, buying, remodeling, or renting. So similar to this topic, but we're going to kind of dive into a couple of other options there for you. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you sponsors. Go by and visit our sponsors too. They've got some goodies there for you.